think we're ready to. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Felton Thomas. I'm the Executive Director of the Cleveland Public Library, and I just want to welcome you to the People's University. All right? So we are just so thankful for Dr. Baston for opening up and asking us to host this here because, of course, as the Cleveland Public Library, we have a great affinity for Tri-C and all of their leaders of the past who have had such great relationships with us. Right now, I only have one small commercial. You'll see it as you go out. We have a program that we're doing, the Mayor's Challenge. It's called Cleveland Reads. And the idea is we are getting our community to read 10 million minutes. We were doing 1 million minutes, but we already got 3 million minutes. So for 2023, we are like bursting that out to 10 million minutes. And that means that as you walk out, we'll have free books available to you to pick up, and then a little bit of information on how to log in and become a Cleveland part of our Cleveland Read initiative. And you guys understand how important reading is to us all. So thank you very much. I now will turn it over to Jenny Fabo, who is the Vice President of Integrated Communications for Tri-C. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas and the Cleveland Public Library for your partnership with Tri-C and for hosting tonight's discussion with the past presidents of Tri-C. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you were able to be here with us this evening. Tonight's event is a series of week-long programs that we have been doing leading up to the inauguration of Tri-C's fifth president, Dr. Michael Baston, which happens to be tomorrow. And this event also coincides with another very important event in the history of the college. We are kicking off our 60th anniversary year, which is why we thought it would be so important to hear from the legacy that has brought us here. So you will hear past and present Tri-C leaders discuss the college's legacy as the first and largest community college and its impact on the region. I regret to inform you that Dr. Nolan Ellison, president from 1974 to 1991, will not be with us this evening due to a family situation, so our thoughts and warm wishes go out to him and his family. Joining us this evening to share their thoughts, and I'm hoping a behind-the-scenes look at Tri-C through the decades, are David Chapman, representing his father, the late David Chapman, Tri-C's first president from 1963 to 1973. Dr. Jerry Sue Thornton, president from 1992 to 2013. And Dr. Alex Johnson, president from 2013 to 2022. And moderating tonight's panel will be Dr. Michael Baston, soon to be inaugurated fifth president of Tri-C.
Thank you so much. Let's give a hand to Jenny. Let's also celebrate our awesome library. I am so excited to be here tonight. When you are in that seat preparing to lead an institution, it's a wonderful thing when you can hear from the voices of those who have led us this far. And so tonight, I'm going to ask them some questions. We're going to get some insights. Hopefully at the end, we'll open it up for you to ask a question or two. But I'm so excited, so let's dive right into our conversation tonight, all right? And so this first question is going to be to Dave. And now this is a hard question, okay? We are so proud to have you and your sister, Cindy Roof, and your family here. Let's give them a hand. Before we get into a lot of your father's contribution to higher education, can you tell us a little bit more about him as a person? Tell us about Dr. Chapman, the man, the father.
Got it. Do you have about 5 hours? When Dad passed about 9 years ago, I thought, wow, there's a whole body of information, knowledge, and contribution to this world, and it's gone. But then I thought, someone once told me, and I think my mom might have been one of them, is that you live, you learn, and you pass it on. And that's what my sister and I have been trying to do, and this is a great honor to be here to further that process. We were blessed. My sister and I, our family was blessed to have a guy who was a man who was the right man at the right time for a lot of things. And it was interesting because he didn't come from wealth. He didn't come from privilege. He, in fact, didn't have a father from the time he was 7 years old on. And his mother, who was a nurse, put he and his two brothers into a home for boys, not for discipline, but just because she couldn't handle 7 children. And he was there for 3 or 4 years, and his sister, who was 16, had gotten married and had a baby. This was back in previous centuries. But anyway, the brother-in-law had a farm or had some kind of business in Montana, so he got in the rumble seat, went to Montana at age 14. And he got to a gentleman's farm, a ranch. The guy said, sorry, no job. He says, I'll sleep in the barn, just give me some food. It's funny, I think it's emotional. But he went through his high school there, graduated 16th in his class out of 16. And I kid you not, he came back and gave the commencement address, and there were like 5 people there or something. But anyway, he went on into World War II, was a real hero. Some great stories, the bombing in London and the jobs he had in Iceland and all throughout the country. But he could have done anything. Bottom line is he felt good about education, went to Billings Polytechnic, now Rocky Mountain College in Billings, Montana, and finished his wartime obligation. And he led by example. He was a quiet guy, yet gregarious, a kind of a man of contrast. But how many of us know that when we see a leader, and we see someone that's attractive, we like to follow that person? And he ate him up. He got his doctorate. It took him only 8 years to get his doctorate. My mom typed up the dissertation. And he had so many wonderful little things he did. I'll give you one tidbit and some other things we can talk about if there's some future questions. But I remember when this is the kind of temperament he had. Never say die, solid, but once again, not overbearing. I came home from college at BW one night, and he was sitting in his normal chair reading the paper, and he looked a little down, and I could tell something was, what's going on? Nah, don't worry about it. Come on, I know something's going on. So he finally shared with me a story that he was among college presidents at some kind of a meeting in Cleveland with the other college presidents. The headline read, not to tell you who it was, so-and-so presents new vocational training innovation, or whatever it was. And it was a whole article about this guy, how he gave this tremendous opportunity, idea, process, or whatever. And I said, yeah. He goes, this man stole your father's idea and went to the press. And I said, what are you going to do about it? It was a Friday night. What are you going to do? He says, well, tonight I'm angry. Tomorrow I'll be disappointed. And by Sunday, I'll have forgotten all about it. That's the kind of man he was. And I could go on for hours, and there'll be other things I'll share. But
Wow.
Love that man. He lived, we learned, and we're passing it on.
We love it.
All right.
I love it. Before I go to our other presidents, let me ask you one more question. As Tri-C's first president, What was your father's vision for the college, and how did he work to achieve it? What do you think his vision was for the college?
Good question. Well, you got a call at midnight in California from Bob Lewis, who I think it was midnight in California. It was 3 in the morning here, and Lewis, I think he either offered him the job or said, "Come on back," to finalize it. But so he went back. They used to kid him about him wearing white socks because he was and his boots from his ranch up in Montana. But that's why I don't wear white socks at all. But he came back and he was told that if you start this college after he was the director of planning in the beginning, you got 1 year, that was 62, give or take August, September. If you get all the issues with finance done and everything within the next year, you'll be our first president. And if you don't, you can go back to California. Silly, but that story has, but his vision, I think, was more incremental than it was vast. I think he was a consensus guy. He could bring people together. He was an optimist. He was a man of good humor. But I would say he was more in the beginning of an inch-by-inch life's ascent, yard by yard, is very hard kind of guy. He was just, but I think he felt the calling, but he would always say, when I would ask him, what is your legacy? What do you, he would deflect it to the Board of Trustees. He would say, me as a part of history is someone else's description, not mine. So to answer your question, Doctor, I would say he was quietly enthusiastic about the opportunity, picked up his family for a director of planning job, and he took it bit by bit by bit. Another little parenthetic, I asked him many times, did you ever think you were going to fail? Did you ever think it wasn't going to work that year? And he said, son, it never entered my mind, not once, that I think it wouldn't work or that I would not figure it out. And some of the stories I can share above and beyond, but that his vision, I think, was one that was quiet but burned deeply. And then, once again, others can describe what they think of what he did. And being here with you all it can be very emotional to know that he was the one that gave us the opportunity to be here.
Isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome? There are many roads to the presidency, and I would argue that a community college presidency is a special calling. Now I ask this of Dr. Thornton and then Dr. Johnson. What motivated you to become a community college president, and how did you first get involved in higher education leadership? Dr. Thornton?
I started as an English teacher in the Chicago area, teaching literature and composition. And so it was really great for me to start early on when community colleges were really first starting. I hate to say that because it dates me. But it's the reality. And fell in love, of course, with teaching and thought that that would be what I would continue to do throughout my career. And as it turned out, an opportunity came to go into an administrative position at a lower level, someone who had taken a leave of absence, and I never got back. So I spent quite a long time in the classroom, which I think was the real motivation. But the reason I stayed in administration, I thought about it, and I basically had about 30 students in a class. I taught 5 classes, so I could impact about 150 people each semester. As a dean, I could impact more. As a vice president, I could impact more. As a president, I could impact more. And that really motivated me to move up and through the ranks of community college leadership. The idea that I could impact the lives of more people was really my motivation.
Powerful. Dr. Johnson.
Well, before I answer the question, I've got to commend David for his glowing portrayal of his dad, and I'm wondering what my children would say if they were sitting in the same place. I have no idea. It's got me thinking.
But you and I can attest to what David is saying is true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you known Dr. Chapman?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So a lot of what you said I knew about, but some of what you shared I did not know, particularly his early upbringing. I want to thank you for sharing that with us. I, quite honestly, went into the community college sector almost kicking and screaming. And I don't mean that in a negative way. My background as a faculty member and a provost was in the four-year sector. And I got a call from Dr. Carol Cartwright, president of Kent State University, who was my doctoral advisor. And she said, there's this bright, energetic, motivated leader who's come to town who's looking for a president of her metropolitan campus. And I know you have been considering presidencies. Would you consider one at a two-year institution? She called me 3 times before I finally made the decision to apply for the job. I came up and was interviewed by Dr. Thornton, the provost at the time, Dr. Sunil Chun, and a host of other people. In the middle of the interview, they said to me, we've got to go to a board meeting, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit further about the job and what we hope we can achieve under your leadership of that particular campus. So I went to the meeting, and during the meeting, I was introduced as the next president of the Metropolitan Campus of Tri-C. So I went to the podium and I thanked everyone for the opportunity. And later on, Dr. Thornton said to me, look, we're sorry about what happened, but this is a great opportunity for you. And so I went back home and I thought about it. I hadn't called Dr. Thornton to accept the position, but it was my intent that I would. I went to work the next day, and the headlines of the local newspaper said, Alex Johnson, provost at Winston-Salem State University, has accepted a job as president of the metropolitan campus of Cuyahoga Community College. And I didn't have a choice because I did not tell my supervisor that I was coming up for the interview. But at any rate, at that four-year institution, we were required by the General Administration of the University of North Carolina to establish articulation agreements with at least 25 of the state's community colleges. And we did. We exceeded that number. And when those students came to us, they were some of the most accomplished individuals as students that I'd ever met. And as a result of that, I gained a healthy respect for community colleges. So my transition was essentially destiny. I have not looked back because I had an opportunity to not only work with an outstanding leader in the form of Dr. Thornton, who brought to us individuals that you only read about, the John Rushes of the world and the Walter Bumpusses of the world, who Kay McClenny's of the world. Dr. Bumpus is here this evening to celebrate Dr. Baston. And since that time, I served at Tri-C for 11 years at Metro. I was fortunate to join Dr. Bumpus in Louisiana as the president of Delgado Community College. He was my boss. I came back north and served as president of the Community College of Allegheny County, and I had the great fortune to return to Tri-C as its 4th president back in 2013. It was a lifetime accomplishment to be part of this august group of presidents that you're hearing about and that you see before you. So that's my story, and I'm sticking by it, Dr. Baston.
Cleveland is an extraordinary place. It is a fabulous city. But it's interesting that our presidents have not been native Clevelanders. And so, David, I'm going to start with you, but then I'm going to ask our other presidents to respond as well. How did your dad approach building relationships with community leaders, business leaders, and other stakeholders to support the college's mission and goals, given that he really came from out of town?
Great question.
Speaking as an out-of-towner.
Well, first of all, very lucky to come to Cleveland. We love Cleveland, that's for sure. My dad, as I'd mentioned, was a consensus builder. He was a great networker. I don't think he, as much as it sounds silly, but I don't think he met a person he didn't like. He would find things about people that he liked. But I think one of the central secrets of his success was his board of trustees. Bob Lewis and Webster Simon, Finney Ham, Tom Mattia, Ralph Bessie. They were like heroes to me, just hearing from. And you notice Doc Kelker, Frank Kelker, a former Western Reserve University All-American. And you notice it wasn't necessarily in vogue in 1963 to have an African-American and a female on your board. He did it. And to the time he passed 9 years ago, I can't believe it's been that long, he would always deflect anything good that happened to him, to the Board of Trustees. He said it was a marriage that was just absolutely incredible. So from that, he branched out and met people. Some of the stories are just, he would find ways to have something good happen with the relationships that he developed. And he was a fighter. Whether it's a Brownell School for $1 a year that he got, and going to Glidden Paint Company to get the paint, and they all went out and painted for the first classes to the first 3,000 students, the biggest enrollment in the history of colleges in the United States, I think, to this day. To going to the Board of Taxation and got a $200 check from some guy that was there. They don't normally do that kind of stuff. And oh my goodness, going to the governor. Tell me, this is a fun story. He went to the governor to look for some funds, and there was some pushback. You can imagine, four-year schools, I don't know, call it jealousy or competition, or he had to fight all through that kind of stuff. But he was with the governor, had a meeting. Governor promised money. After the meeting, it gives you an interesting little tidbit. The governor invited, Dr. Chapman, can I just talk with you a second privately? He went in the other room, and he said, I don't know if you know this, Dr. Chapman, did you know there's a couple of your board members are Democrat? Did you know that? My dad, as he told the story, said, I don't know what political persuasion anybody on my board is. I know they're upstanding, honest, hardworking, huge contributors to the community, and frankly, I don't care, Governor. Anything else? After that meeting, after the promise of money, there was a fellow, maybe you've heard the name, Bud Weidenthal. Bud was with the Cleveland Press. That was back in the day before he went to the Plain Dealer. And God bless Bud. What an amazing guy. He passed, I think, about a year ago at 96. What a good guy. But anyway, no money came from the governor. Week passed, 2 weeks. What a surprise, right? He happened to mention it to Bud. The next day, Bud put an article or a little blip in the paper. Governor blank blank promised money to Tri-C, blah, blah. The next day, my dad got a call from the governor saying, what is this article? I promised you're going to get the money. The next day or a week later, the money was there. Consensus building, community building, having the right people care about you, and obviously, as important of all, a great cause, a powerful cause. But that perhaps is helpful. Okay.
Thank you. That's good. All right. You weren't born here in Cleveland either. Tell us about your sort of Cleveland connection story.
I would like to just add one thing to David's story about his dad and the dollar for the Brownell building. It was very interesting because he did have a great respect for his board. And it was Bob Lewis who really negotiated the idea of renting Brownell to Cuyahoga Community College to get it started. But he turned to Dr. Chapman and said, give him the dollar. So it wasn't the board that paid the dollar, it was Dr. Chapman. And Bob Lewis was one of my absolute favorite people, so he cuts across several of us as presidents who knew Bob Lewis and his wife well. Going back to how I became part of the community, it does go back to the board members. And Nadine Fian was sort of assigned to help introduce me to the community because she was vice chair of the board and put together a plan. Alice Butts, who's in the audience this evening, certainly Alice was part of that. Alice and her husband had events at their home for me and introduced me to people, and there were other board members like Julian Earls that were so gracious and so willing to sponsor me for events, invite me to events, have events at their home for me and invite people in. And so it was amazing how quick I started meeting people through the Board of Trustees. Likewise, the foundation board also invited me to events and spread their wings broadly to help me, again, meet people in the community. And so it happened very, very quickly. I would say that Alice and Charlie were my dates to most events. When I came, I was a single lady, and they were my dates to a lot of events that I went to here in the community. So it's very interesting the role that a board plays in supporting and helping a president to hone the leadership, to get to know the community and to be part of the community, as well as faculty and staff within the college. So I think across the board, there was a plan. So it wasn't haphazardly done. There was a plan to, again, help the new president meet people in the community because that person is the face of the college representing the institution. That is the reason why you are important, not because of who you are, but what you represent.
And you also found love in Cleveland.
I did. And got married at Case Western Reserve University.
See, great things happen in Cleveland. See? And how about you?
Certainly my response would be similar to what has been conveyed, shared by Dave and also Dr. Thornton. Not only did the Board of Trustees provide the support for my transition to the presidency, but the foundation board was instrumental in that regard as well. So there were any number of receptions, both at local establishments and in individuals' homes. I had an opportunity to talk about my vision and hopes and aspirations for the institution that ultimately became the centerpiece for the work that we did all together here at Tri-C. I would be remiss if I did not recognize the support that I also received from Dr. Thornton. We met regularly. She shared with me all that she could about Cleveland. She shared with me her thoughts and perceptions, and she allowed me to take the reins and build upon the rich foundation that she established. I will share with you that in reflecting on Dr. Chapman, he built this college out of whole cloth. He had absolutely nothing to begin this enterprise. He made do with what he had. Dr. Nolan Ellison, unfortunately, is not here this evening, but he coined this institution a beacon of hope on the Great Lakes. And Dr. Thornton took it further and created a national model for community college excellence that serves us well today. And I am so appreciative that I was able to follow in their dynamic footsteps.
If I may,
Yeah.
the comment about Dr. Ellison is just so incredibly important because as Dr. Johnson knows, we inherited from Dr. Chapman and Dr. Ellison a wonderful institution that really allowed us to just come in and add to it and to build onto it. But Dr. Ellison created such a legacy in terms of workforce training for Cuyahoga Community College. I credit him with so much of the programming that we have and had in relation to jobs and helping people get a new life and helping people to rebuild their lives. That's where futures began, right, Bill? Where futures began. I inherited that when I came in following Dr. Ellison, and I can tell you, it was a wonderful institution and he was a great leader to follow.
Let's give a hand to Dr. Ellison.
If I may interject as well, I want to make sure that I acknowledge the great kindness that Dr. Johnson and Dr. Thornton showed to my father as they took the reins, and they're modest. My dad certainly did a great job, but it would have been nothing without a follow-up. You know, it's like anything else in life. You can try something, but if you don't have the follow-through. And as a part of that, not only the substantive things that they've done and the incredible imprint they've made in a positive way on the lives of so many people educationally, but they're both just, and Dr. Ellison as well, just good people. A parenthetic, my dad passed away about 9 years ago, and I'm in my home in Jersey, and I got a call from Dr. Johnson on behalf of he and Dr. Thornton. My dad was having a celebration of life that Sunday. It happened to be Father's Day. And he wanted to know the itinerary. He wanted to know the details of, and I said, what are you talking about? It's Father's Day, Dr. Johnson. You can't go leave your family on Father's Day. And he said, are you kidding? He said, if your dad wasn't here, I never would have a job here. And he and Dr. Thornton took the trip all the way to California to help our family, soothe our family in such a great way. That's the kind of people that the college that's known as Cuyahoga Community College is. Thank you.
You all see why our theme is celebrating legacy, because we do have extraordinary leaders that have led this institution. And they led the institution through challenging times. In fact, from the very beginning, just a few months after the opening of the college, we had the assassination of our president, cold and hot wars, technological revolutions to once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic. What were some of the biggest challenges faced by our presidents, and how were they addressed? I'm going to start this time with Dr. Johnson. As you think about some of the greatest challenges you face, is there one that kind of stands out in your mind, and how did you deal with it? And I wonder which one you're going to pick.
Well, I think the biggest challenge that I confronted as a president was actually not at Tri-C, was at Delgado Community College in Louisiana, when the college and the community were hit by Hurricane Katrina. It was a difficult moment for all of us, but I will share with you that the outpouring of support and engagement by the college and community were tremendous. Dr. Bumpus displayed a form of fortitude that I had never seen in a president or a leader. And he took on the entire General Assembly of Louisiana in order to ensure that our institutions were protected. And he covered for me when I wanted to open up the institution and did not confer with facilities control to mitigate the mold that was present, because we recognized that it would be important for Delgado to come back to life and then promote the betterment of that community. So when Hurricane Katrina hit us, we were at 17,000. Following spring semester of 2006, I had to help people understand how important we are. And I said to them, if we work together to bring back 10,000 students, we would be in really, really great shape. Not only did we reach that 10,000 goal, we actually had 10,001 students. And it was a tremendous, tremendous challenge to all of us. And what I recognize and what I remember from that event more than anything else, besides the damage and the toil, both personally and otherwise, are the individuals who stepped forward, who had no formal leadership role, but took on responsibility in a way that made you feel honored, proud, and humbled. I've had financial concerns that I've had to address. I had to close one of our centers at Delgado. Here, the political climate is becoming more difficult to maneuver, and we have to be careful about how we do that. But I think the greatest challenge that I experienced as a president was Hurricane Katrina, by far.
Dr. Thornton.
Well, over 21 years, as you would know, Dr. Baston, there have been many challenges, whether they were financial or you were looking at enrollment trends and patterns or accidents from construction where someone loses his or her life during the construction project. I remember when Chief Harris came to us from Cleveland, having been in charge of community policing, and I said to him mistakenly, I would look back at that and think, why did I say it? I said to the chief, welcome to Cuyahoga Community College, such a safe place. You're going to find that you'll not have anything to do, and went through that, and I guess it wasn't a week we had a shooting on the eastern campus of 2 students. And so lots of things happened over those 21 years, but you know, the thing that I think stands out is Dr. Johnson saying, you have so many wonderful people with you, and they go through those conflicts and troubling times together with you as a family. Tri-C has always been a family, and I think that makes the difference no matter what's going on. Personally, the hardest time for me at Cuyahoga Community College was losing our Western Campus president, Dr. Carmelita Thomas. When she passed, that was personally very hard for me. You become family. You become very good friends. And to go through an illness with someone and to eventually see them lose that battle, and knowing how important that was to the Western Campus and how important she was as a leader to the Western Campus and how loved. So it's things like that that are really personal. They're not distant kinds of things. They're things that you feel, and it's all about people.
Thank you. You know, there are so many challenges that the presidents faced during their time, but there are also a lot of things that they can celebrate of the good things that have happened. I want to start this time with you, David. You know, Tri-C's always been a national leader in innovation, but we were the first community college in the state. Do you think your dad saw himself as a pioneer?
Wow, that's a great question. I think honestly, I don't think so. He never spoke in those terms. I think he got up in the morning and strapped on his boots, so to speak, and went to work. And I think that goes back to what I'd mentioned earlier about him repeating that it's up to others to ascribe personality or accomplishments and not for him. But I want to, this last question, you got my attention on something I wanted to make sure I covered. And Dr. Thornton had talked about team, and it's interesting. You go through tough times or a situation like, I don't know how you did it, Katrina, but you go through those times and they're made tolerable, just like when we lose someone we love. You know, what helps us with other people who can understand or try to understand what we're going through. There's an old adage or acronym, TEAM, together everyone achieves more. And And I think of that board that my dad had, and they were really tight. Dr. Mattia and my dad did all kinds of things together, and Bob Lewis and family gatherings. But you mentioned about tough times. The 60s that wasn't any bed of roses. You know, you had Kennedy's assassination, you had Dr. King, the Vietnam War, civil unrest. You know, there's still lots to do out there. We all know that. But that was a tough. And one of my dad's best friends, and this is, I think, a good story, was Frank Kelker, Doc Kelker. The African-American Board of Trustee was the nicest guy. My dad and he played golf together. They ate out together. They just were tight. And it was interesting because they were both slim, tall build, and they just enjoyed each other all the time. I think it was what was Huff Riot, 66, 67? Yeah, there was a lot of unrest going on, as you can imagine. And there was a particularly difficult night, as I'm understanding it, where I don't know what spot on campus it took place, but it was really a bad, riotous kind of situation. So my dad turned to Doc and said, "Let's go." And they went down to the site, got on the stage, and the two of them together, one really great African-American, one other guy who I called Dad, and they totally calmed the whole crowd down. It was like, I heard from other people, it was almost like a miracle. But they saw two guys who loved each other helping the group. And that same guy, not long after, was playing golf with my dad. I forget where, somewhere around Akron. I don't want to besmirch the location. They were playing golf. They were fourth or fifth hole. And one of the little caddy masters came out to Doc Kelker and asked him to leave the course because he was black. My dad said, "I'm coming with you." Doc Kelker said, No, you enjoy your golf." And my dad said, "There's not a chance in the world." And they both got off the course, left, as an example of dealing personally with difficult times. Love can conquer. Respect, the honoring of friendships should overcome everything. Why it doesn't, it frustrates the heck out of me. But that was a tough time, that whole period of time that they lived through. But they were stronger because of their relationship and their love for each other.
Isn't that a powerful thing?
Dr. Chapman may not be here, but this audience is seeing him through David.
Oh, awesome. Now I'm going to give both Dr. Thornton and Dr. Johnson an opportunity to tell you what brought them the most joy in the great work that they were able to do. Dr. Thornton, what brought you the most joy?
Wow. My greatest joy came for sure every graduation. Seeing those students walk across the stage, often giving you hugs, often almost knocking me down. But they were so happy to be finishing. And one lady said to me, "I've been at this for 25 years and I made it." But I think that's the culmination of what we do at Cuyahoga Community College. When you see students get certificates, degrees, etc., that's what made it worthwhile all year long, no matter what you had to go through or endure, because that's why we're here. You change lives, and you see people have an opportunity to achieve something that they probably thought they never could. Graduations were always fairly noisy, even though as presidents we tried to make them civil. But there were people in the audience, as you all know, yelling and screaming for their family member, walking across the stage. And it's a family project when somebody gets a degree. And so the joy at graduation, I think, is my biggest joy. At every graduation, I'll tell you one quick story about a graduation where we were getting ready to go on the stage, and the student who was giving the speech that evening was a young lady, and her family was in the audience, her husband, two little kids, mom and dad. She was quite pregnant. and she started having labor pains. We said to her, we need to get you to the hospital. It's really important. You know, you need to go now. She said, I'm not leaving. I have worked too hard. My family has sacrificed too much. I am walking across that stage. So I said to the speaker, I don't know how long your speech was going to be, but it's about a minute. And we're getting this young lady across the stage, giving her her degree so she can go to UH. But really, those are the joys. Seeing people graduate, seeing people have opportunities, that's what it's about.
You talk about rapid credentials. Come on, Doctor.
Like Dr. Thornton, the commencement exercise, graduation, is perhaps among my greatest joys. Each time we celebrate the accomplishments of these students. I also had the opportunity to acknowledge individuals among the graduates who had overcome significant odds. And it was always a delight to see those individuals thrive and really benefit from that environment. On one occasion at graduation, we bestowed an honorary a degree posthumously. And it's a day I will never forget, because accepting that degree on behalf of his mom was her son. Little boy, probably no more than 9 or 10 years old. And over the course of time, we've kept in touch with him. And this past year, or the semester past, he became a student here at Tri-C on a full ride. And he is doing marvelously well. So to me, Dr. Thornton, like you, the graduation and all that entails, and the memorable stories associated with individual students is tremendous. But, you know, among my greatest joys, too, is to see the individuals that I have an opportunity to work with on a daily basis thrive in this environment and take on really, really ambitious and challenging responsibilities to ensure that the institution continues to advance. So I love these folk, I really do. And God bless you all for being here this evening to support Dr. Baston. Thank you.
At this time, we're going to take 2 or 3 questions from the audience, and then we're going to come back and let each of our wonderful panelists give us a word of encouragement as we go into this next phase of our inaugural journey. And so we've got 2 or 3 people. You can stand, and we can we've got a mic person there, and so raise your hand, and we'll come to you. Now, don't all do it at one time. Here we go. Right down. There's 1 and then 2. Beverly, then Felton, and then I'll turn to our panelists.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for all of you who are sitting on the panel. I have a story of my own with Dr. Thornton, Dr. Johnson, and Dr. Baston. So, what is retirement like? Do you miss us?
Retirement's fun. Yeah. It is fun. I would say, and Dr. Johnson and I have talked about this, it's difficult making the transition because we are people, and we're used to being around people, and we gain energy from people. And as you move from that, you don't have that daily contact. You don't have that purpose of life that you had when you were part of Tri-C, whether it was a faculty member, staff member, administrator. You really gain that energy from being part of the mission of the college. And so I think it's a transition. You enjoy it. You look forward to having the extra time. You wondered how you were able to accomplish so much when you were working. But you look back, and the memories, I think, sustain you during retirement of the good joys that you had when you were working.
Yeah, I have to agree with Dr. Thornton. It's hard to manufacture over 20 some odd thousand students and 3,600 colleagues when you're not in close proximity with them anymore. So I do miss the collaboration. I miss the camaraderie. But the memories will forever linger both in my heart and my mind. Am I enjoying retirement, Beverly? Yes, I am. I really am. So I'm struggling with the transition, but at the same time, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And I have a bucket list, and my wife and I are enjoying the experiences that we did not have during the time that I was working. So I think that's important to do once you're no longer engaged in your work on a full-time basis. And I know that Dr. Thornton is doing a lot of traveling as well. So thank you for the question.
I would just add real quickly to that. I would tell you the first week after you're retired, I looked around and said, for those of you who know me know that Wanda Whitmore was a partner with me forever. And I looked around after the first week and I said, where's Wanda? I can't make it. I can't survive.
And there's Wanda
So David, you can also give us a little spiel on your dad. What was it like when your dad retired? What was home life like?
Well, good question. The first thing he did was drive from California in his Airstream trailer with my mother to be at my wedding, and my wife's wedding too. She was there, but he kept himself constant. He ended up doing some interim work with community colleges. He sat on the board of a couple of major juvenile crime prevention processes in his town in California. And he got to be way too good at golf, so much so that he embarrassed me. But he set an example from my sister Cindy, who plays 8 days a week now. She beats me now. But no, you know, the key for him was staying busy, planting his roses, rubbing his, and painting his deck in the backyard in his 90s. I think, when did he give the commencement address? Was he 90 something then?
He was, and he came back to help me run the college.
Yes, he did. I've got videos to prove it. But you already knew how to do it.
He was wonderful. The return to the college for him after retirement, I think, was such a joy, because coming back and looking at something you helped start after you've been away for a few years, I think was so rewarding for him. He could see his fingerprints all over the institution.
He was just amazed. And speaking of legacy, I'd be remiss not to mention, I have my nephew who's in a high-level, successful job in education, Cordell Smith with his wife Stacy, and from Orville. He did want to mention, if anybody wants Smucker's jam, it's right outside. And my sister Cindy, of course, who achieved a lot in the medical profession out in California, but that's part of his legacy as well.
Felton, you get the last question. Here we go.
Well, there are very few institutions, if any, that have such a transition of leadership in which you guys have all supported each other and moved forward. It's fascinating to see, and I just want you guys to, was there intention? What was the intention around that, or is it just you guys are just so good people?
You know, I think there was such a love for the institution that it transcended us as individuals, as individual people. I think there's been a desire by each president, if I may, by each president to further the growth, the leadership of the next generation after him or her. And so I just think that there is the college is the centerpiece. And it's easy when the students and the institution is the centerpiece of everything. It's not self anymore. And you want to see the next person succeed. I wanted to see Dr. Johnson be successful. He wants to see Dr. Baston be successful. And so I think that that's the kind of camaraderie that, that we've all had and will continue to have in our support of Dr. Baston. It's important for him to be successful.
So each of you now, what is your hope for the next 60 years of Tri-C? No small feat, but now we'll give you a chance. We'll start with you, David. What's your hope?
We need to hire some guy like Dr. Michael Baston. No, I mean that you're a very special man, and you got a big responsibility. But I think, and it sounds silly, we can always improve, obviously, but to know and be proud of the things that are good. Someone once said to me, be a good finder. Be a good finder. And it's not just a good finder for the future, but it's a good finder in the past. Things that worked, people you enjoyed being with, relationships. Life moves so quickly. What's that old saying? Life's what happens when you're making other plans, you know? Because we all have personal things happening, but to stop, breathe, and think, what are the good things that have happened at this school? And there's so many of them, not only in terms of things, programs, but people, individuals who made a difference. You know, you don't have to be really famous to make an imprint on life. You just be there and do your job and enjoy what you're doing. Someone's going to notice. But take a look at what's happened. Take as many as those good things that have happened, like you guys, and like many of you who are doing God's work. Take those happy moments and then catapult those feelings and those good finding to the future, and find good things every day. Make a difference in a good way, and all of a sudden you'll be here 60 years from now, and they'll say, remember old Baston? He was something else, wasn't he? Anyway, that's... And he gave the commencement address when he was 98 years old.
Dr. Thornton.
I would say that seeing Tri-C continue to fulfill its mission, because its mission is so important, not only now, but I'm sure it will continue to be in the future. Huge economic divide. Tri-C and its ability to help people get jobs, start careers, maintain careers, helps to shorten that divide that we have of those who have and those who have not. The racial disparities in our country, all of the issues that we're facing, I think Tri-C's mission is directed directly at that. And I think if in the future, as in the past, we can continue to fulfill that mission, we can make a big difference in the lives of people in our community.
I agree with both Dave and Dr. Thornton. And I do believe very, very strongly that in addition to a focus on mission, and there needs to be strategy that promote continuous improvement, that builds upon the things that have been highly successful for us. And Dr. Baston, reading about some of the things that you hope to achieve during your term as presidency, I know that we're going to be in really, really good shape. We might ask you to stick around for 60 years.
Would you help me celebrate these amazing panelists? Powerful 60 years of excellence. Once again, we want to thank you for being here with us today. We certainly want to thank our partners at the library. We want to thank our friends at RTA, who are also a part of tonight's event. tomorrow we will begin the final stops on the road to the inauguration. At 11 o'clock at our Metropolitan campus, we will be there for the formal inauguration ceremony. And tomorrow night, if you can get there, we will be at First Energy Stadium for the Baston Bash. So I hope you'll enjoy. Once again, help me celebrate our wonderful, wonderful panelists. Thank you all. We appreciate you, and have a wonderful evening.